Hi everyone, welcome in. We're just sort of admitting people and um, getting everything going here. Um, so we will jump in. I'll probably give people like 30 seconds here, um, because they're not gonna hop in right at noon. So we'll give it just a second and then we'll get moving. Okay, I think we're gonna be good. I've got one of my co-hosts here who's gonna be watching the participation. As people join to let people in. So um, if they join late, that's fine. But we'll go ahead and get started. Um, we're super excited about this series. Um, it's something that we've been looking forward to for a long time in our office, and so this is something that is very exciting. It's an exciting day for me and for the rest of our team. Um, by way of introduction, my name's Austin Jones. I work for the Utah Center for Rural Health, which houses the Rural Health Association of Utah. Um, and typically in these sessions, I will not be doing a lot of talking. It'll be people who are a little smarter and a little better at this stuff than I am. But I am lucky enough to be able to host this first session to sort of introduce um, what stigma is, what it looks like, how it impacts individuals with substance use disorder. Um, and so I'm really excited to sort of introduce the topic. As you know, through your registration, we have 8 sessions on substance use disorder stigma reduction. These are open to everyone. These are open to community members, community leaders, government officials, um, as well as healthcare professionals. And so if you have people in your life that you think would either enjoy attending this or could benefit from this sort of training, please invite them. You can send them the link that you use to register, or the QR code. So this is open to everyone. A little background on Project Echo. Echo is a virtual platform used to um, give trainings like this. It was started about 20 years ago at the University of New Mexico, um, because they were having a hard time getting training to rural providers in healthcare. And so they started Echo and started doing virtual training, and it's caught on. It's now a worldwide program. And here at Southern Utah University and with the Rural Health Association of Utah, we're lucky enough to be a partner with Project Echo. So echoes can take on all sorts of different forms. Most of our previous Echo series with RHAU have been healthcare based, directed at healthcare providers. And so this is the first time it's sort of open to everyone. We're not targeting one specific group with this training series. It's just beneficial to everyone. We hope it's beneficial to everyone. And so we'll go ahead and jump in here. This is going to seem weird to start a presentation with a pause, but we have some data collection that we need to do from our office and from the university in order for this training to, I guess, count. I mean, it counts, but in order for us to continue being an Echo hub, we need to gather some data. So I would invite you to take maybe 5 minutes, scan this QR code if you can, and then answer the questions on the form that come up. Now, I mentioned that most of our Echo series have been directed at healthcare professionals. There are some questions there that are still directly related to healthcare professionals. If those don't apply to you, go ahead and either choose other, or if it's not a required selection, just don't answer. So don't be alarmed when that comes up. We don't necessarily need that. It's just we sort of have just a template that we use. So I'm gonna give maybe 5 minutes for you to scan in and start answering those questions. If you're not able to get done, that's okay. The other thing that we'll do is um, um, if you, oh, and I will send a link to that as well. But if you would take in this time as well, one of the tenets to Echo is that it is a collaborative effort. Um, that doesn't mean I'm going to be calling on people just at random or anything. You don't have to worry about that. But we do want to get to know each other. I do want you to feel like you can participate and chime in with questions or comments. And so if you would, while we're doing this um, little survey, if you would also go into the chat and drop your name and anything else about you that you think the group would like to know, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to see that. So let me pull up, I'm going to drop a link in the chat to the survey in case you're already on your phone, or in case that's easier. Here's that. And then I will hop back in. I'm going to just, mute myself and set a timer here for about 5 minutes. Okay, that wasn't quite 5 minutes, but I will you're welcome to continue filling that out if you'd like, or you can jump back into it after we're done. Um, so the purpose of today's series really is just to do a super basic introduction to what stigma is, what it looks like. We're not going to dive super deep. We've got experts coming in for the next few weeks that will do that, and I don't want to steal anything that they may share. But it's important to establish sort of a baseline of what we're looking at here and what we need to look for. So, what is stigma? Stigma is, I just pulled up the dictionary definition. I know that's the cliche go-to when you're giving a presentation, go to the dictionary and find what you're looking at. But I mean, it really is so helpful to understand what we are looking at, what's important and what's going on. And so stigma is just a set of negative and unfair beliefs that a society or group of people have about something. Um, and I want to make something super clear as we get started. I've been in these presentations before or other presentations like this and have immediately just felt like an overwhelming sense of guilt or concern. And I hope that's not what happens today. I want to approach this from an understanding that we're all people, we all make mistakes, we all have biases and stigmas against people that are intrinsic and that are just, developed and maybe not maliciously. Um, we're all imperfect and we're all learning, we're all growing, and so the purpose of this presentation is not to make you feel guilty, not to make anyone feel guilty. It's not to pound the table and say that we're all wrong and we need to make these, monumental changes. It's the purpose of this is really just to give better understanding to what stigma is in the substance use disorder world, what that looks like, and to make those small changes in ourselves if needed. We've all got biases and we've all got things that our understanding is imperfect. And so immediately that's just something I want to establish here is we're all learning and growing. We're all trying to figure this out. And so just because we are going to point out some stigma, we're going to point out some things with substance use disorder that may get a little uncomfortable. That's not meant to cause guilt. It's meant to show that we can reduce that stigma, that we can change, that we can make the world a little bit better place, and that those changes happen a small step at a time. I also wanted to share this B definition here, a mark of shame or discredit. The word stigma comes from a Latin word that literally just means a mark, like to be marked. I think that gives us a baseline of what stigma means in our modern lexicon, that it quite literally derives from being marked. It's a mark, it's a societal mark that is placed on a person or a group of people unfairly and negatively. There are three kinds of stigma that we will talk about: structural stigma, public stigma, and self-stigma. Structural stigma is laws, or our laws, policies, regulations. So these are, structural forms where people can either have a stigma that negatively affects them through laws that have been implemented, policies that have been implemented, regulations, or just through the general attitudes of those that are in charge, general attitudes of those who are making these policy decisions. There are lots of examples of this, and we'll talk about some of those. Public stigma are attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that are held sometimes widely or sometimes not even widely, just by a few individuals. And so this is where we'll spend most of our time. Um, but there's also self-stigma, and that is when we um, are stigmatizing ourselves. We have a sense of shame that comes intrinsically because of something that we don't like about ourselves. So that can look like a lot of different things. And so we'll talk about all three of these, but these are sort of the three baseline types of stigma. Um, that comes from the National Committee on the Science of Changing Behavioral Health Social Norms. And so this is sort of the baseline that they're working off of and the baseline that we'll work off of going forward. So how does stigma develop? I liked this graphic a lot. It came from the National Center on Substance Abuse and Child Welfare. It starts with a thought or a belief that then moves into an emotion or a feeling that reinforces that. And then that changes into behavior or action. So the behavior and action is what we see. That's behaviors that we see in other people or in ourselves, but it starts with our thoughts and our beliefs and our emotions and our feelings. And that's something that's super important to recognize, and we're going to spend a minute on this. So the thoughts and beliefs, that can come from a lot of places. Of course, that starts from our very earliest days where our parents have thoughts and beliefs, our siblings, if we have older siblings, or as younger siblings come along, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, different people, they all have their own thoughts and beliefs that they bring to the table, and they bring those to you, and so those enter your mind as thoughts and beliefs. Then as we go forward, we have feelings and emotions that either reinforce those thoughts or they kind of kick those thoughts out. And that's where stigma becomes really rooted in ourselves and really sort of reinforced. And then, of course, we've got our behaviors and our actions, sort of the outward expression of those inward feelings and thoughts. Something I want to touch on here that is really important to note is the media perception of substance use specifically. That can bring a lot of thoughts and beliefs to the table that are that end up leading to stigma. Media has a huge impact on thoughts and beliefs and public opinion. So I think we can all think of things that that we have seen in the media that have made us feel a certain way, make us think a certain way, whether it's been true or not. An example, sort of just not even about people. When I was a kid and I would watch TV, all of the shows, or many of the shows that I would watch, talked about Brussels sprouts and how terrible Brussels sprouts were, how awful they were. And we didn't eat Brussels sprouts in my house because my mom didn't like Brussels sprouts, but I'd never had them. I grew up hating Brussels sprouts and never tasting them because the thought and the belief was there through the media, through what I was consuming on TV, that Brussels sprouts are bad. And then I grew up and I was eating at a friend's house and they had Brussels sprouts and I decided to try them. And that was hard, right? I had this thought, this belief that Brussels sprouts were gross. That triggered something in my emotions that it felt good to make fun of Brussels sprouts. That felt like a good thing because it was so prevalent in media. But then I went and tried Brussels sprouts and found out that I really liked Brussels sprouts, that I didn't think they were gross. And maybe it was just the way that my friend's mom prepared them, or maybe it's just, I mean, I've had Brussels sprouts a lot since then. I think I just like Brussels sprouts. But I immediately had to realize that the perception that I had based on the portrayal in the media was wrong for me. That Brussels sprouts were something that I did like. That's not a perfect example here, but it does point and paint a picture of what we're dealing with media. Um, and so a lot of media portrays, well, and this may be getting into other realms here, but it portrays drinking and using drugs as fun, as things that everyone does, as how you have a good time, how you party. Um, and so, of course, people that are consuming that media, if they want to go have fun and that's all they've seen, then they want to go out and try drinking and using drugs. And that, for some people, is just a one-time thing, or they're able to control it. But for some people, that can lead to addiction and to substance use disorder. And so, um, you know, we've got that. But then we've also got media that portrays um, people with substance use disorder, addicts is what they'll call them often. And we're going to talk about the impact of language, but um, as aggressive, as dangerous, as people that you want to avoid. Oftentimes, homelessness and other things are tied with that. And so, if that's all that we're able to draw on when we're making judgments about people with substance use disorder, that can lead to some really dangerous stigma. Um, and so, we want to be sure that we um, are using those experiences and forming um, our thoughts and our opinions. Um, of course, those are always forming, and so when we've got new information, we need to make sure that we're evaluating the previous thoughts and beliefs and feelings that we've had, and making sure that we're sort of updating our worldview with correct information. Something that you'll hear and something that I've found to be true since coming into this role and into this world is that really the biggest way to reduce stigma, the most impactful way to reduce stigma is just to reach out to people, get to know people. Um, and that can be scary, especially because we kind of talked before coming into this role, my experience with addiction and with substance use disorder was TV. It was movies. It was music. Um, that was pretty much it. And so, of course, that was kind of a scary thing because there's a lot of negative portrayals out there. Um, but as I've come into this role, as I've started interacting with people with substance use disorder, people who are in recovery, um, it's opened my eyes that um, to a lot of things, and we're going to talk about a lot of the stigmas that are out there. But anyway, this is how stigma develops. This is how we end up with stigma, and media does play a big role in sort of widespread stigma and substance use disorder. There's a lot of widespread stigma out there. The effects of stigma in relation to substance use disorder. These are just a few things that are listed by the National Institute of Health as outcomes of stigma related to substance use disorder. So people with substance use disorder who need care may not seek it. And then the third bullet point, people receive a poor quality of care. That may also be because they're scared to disclose it, which ties into number two. All of these kind of fit together. But people who need care may not seek it. They may be scared to go to rehab because of what they've seen on TV or what they've heard from people. They may be scared to admit that they're dealing with substance use disorder because they don't want that to affect a job that they have or a program that they're in school. They may be scared to admit it to a doctor because they don't want to come off as less than. And there are studies out there that show that medical professionals do often or have often in the past treated patients differently with substance use disorder in a negative way. And so that can lead to a lot of different things, a lot of different outcomes that are difficult. That's why stigma reduction is so important, why we need to talk about these things. People fear disclosing their substance use. That's not just to medical professionals, that's to their families and friends. And that can be for a lot of different reasons as well. Of course, with our families, and really with everyone, we don't want to let people down. We don't want to show sort of our own wounds. We want to come across as perfect and whole. It can be hard to be vulnerable. And then people receiving a poor quality of care. Of course, when we're dealing with substance use disorder, that's already a medical condition that's difficult enough. And so when you're not receiving the quality of care that we need in order to live a healthy life, of course, that is extremely dangerous. And then they found that because of stigma, people may increase their substance use, and that can be for a variety of reasons. But that's something that has been an outcome of the stigma that exists surrounding substance use disorder, is that it can actually lead to an increase of substance use. It doesn't always, of course, and I want to be sure that we know that we're not dealing in absolutes here, that every situation is different, every person is different, and so we're not dealing with absolutes here, but there have been studies around that have shown that may be an outcome of the stigma that we see prevalent in our society. And then these are just a few things that we can do, again, suggested by the National Institute of Health, to understand and to reduce stigma. These are just a few ideas. We're going to have 7 more sessions about reducing stigma use, and we'll cover some of this, we'll cover some other things. But understanding substance use disorders as chronic treatable medical conditions, that's a huge one. Knowing that, the thing that we hear often is that, they made the choice, and so they're living with the consequences of their actions. And while it's true that they made a choice to use a substance, that doesn't mean that they made the choice to be addicted to the substance. That's brain chemistry. There's lots there that I don't understand, but understanding that it's a condition that is treatable, it's chronic, it's outside of their control. Just understanding that one thing has a huge impact on the way we view people with substance use disorder, and how we treat them. Replacing stigmatizing language, we're going to have a whole session on that. That's really important. It seems like a little thing, and I haven't been perfect. I'm going to go back and watch this and probably cringe at myself. And that's okay, right? Because like we talked about, we're all learning, we're all growing. But there are words and phrases that impact stigma. And that's, again, I don't want anyone to beat themselves up over any of this. I hope that you understand and recognize that none of us are going to be perfect in this, but it does make a huge difference when we make an effort to replace stigmatizing language with language that's more suited to people with substance use disorder. It's less stigmatizing, less negative. And so we'll have a session on that here. It's one of our first ones, and so that'll be a great opportunity for us to learn more about that. Addressing structural stigma. So reaching out to our policymakers and finding ways to reverse some of the policies, laws, procedures that have led to negative stigma in in our country and in our government, reaching out and finding solutions to those things, finding things that we can do better, so that the system itself is working at its maximum output. Because when the system is working against someone, that's a hard battle. It's a hard hill to climb. So if the system in place is better, then it leads to better outcomes all around. And so that, honestly, I know this was we scheduled out an hour for this, and as I went through, I realized that a lot of what I wanted to cover in this first session would be covered by other people. So we may end early, but I want to open it up in case anyone has questions or concerns, comments, things that we want to discuss. So I'll open it up to you all. Thank you, Ashley. Ashley in the chat said great information. I hope so. And I hope that this is a helpful introduction to what we've got coming forward. Ashley is one of the experts that I work with, and she's awesome. So I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to this series. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to engage in important discourse. Jessica, does this address the shame and guilt aspect of addiction? Yes, we will have a session on that, at least one. In fact, I will pull the schedule up here on this screen. Can everyone see that? Does that look good? So we had this session.
What does stigma?
You can?
No, we can't see it.
Oh, then
Still your contact info.
Oh, then let's back out of that. And I'm gonna do a new share of this. So this is our schedule. Subject to change. There may be some changes, but we've got ACE scores. That is a super helpful way to understand substance use disorder. I'm really looking forward to that session. Again, some of these dates may change. We may flip things, but role of disparities on substance use disorder, the impact of language with substance use disorder and stigma within cultures, local voices of recovery, local resources and efforts, and lessons learned and next steps. And so we're in some of these sessions, we're going to talk about sort of the self-stigma, the stigma that people with substance use disorder build in themselves as part of the stigma, and the negative impacts of that. Samantha just shared that schedule in the chat. And again, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Again, I would invite you, if you have people that you know that you think would benefit from this series, that you think would benefit from some of these topics, I'd invite you to share a registration link with them. It's not too late. And of course, all of these are going to be recorded and uploaded to YouTube, and we'll share those on our website. So, so anything that is missed can be found again. And then if there's any questions or concerns, I did drop my email at the end of that presentation, but I'll put it again here in the chat. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to ask any questions, to reach out if there's anything I can help you with outside of this. Of course, as the Rural Health Association of Utah, we are always looking to serve rural Utah. And so if there's anything, even if it's not related to this series, if there's anything that I can help with outside of that, we will get going. But anyway, I'll give you some time back here. I know many of you are on your lunch hours, so I'll give you some time back to go enjoy food or go, take care of what you need to in the rest of your day. But we will see you next week, same time, same place, and look forward to seeing you then.